So today we're talking about what twists are going to be used in Advent of Tessellations this year in 2024. And I've got a stack of 8-fold triangle grids on hexagons, so that's 8 divisions from one side to the other side, parallel to the edges of the paper. And we're going to go through all of these different twists that will be used: the closed and open triangle, the closed and open hexagon, the closed and open rhombus, and a selection of hybrid hexagons, including all 3 of the uniaxial, but that's a distinction that doesn't matter in this context. These 3 hybrid hexagon twists that have rotations that make them look exactly the same, and a couple of the non-symmetric hybrid hexagons, including a 3rd one that I don't have a demo of right in front of me right now. So let's go ahead and get started with the closed triangle twist. I'll grab one grid to start. And welcome everyone watching live. And for the closed triangle twist, we're going to have 3 pleats because it's a triangle. Those pleats are going to be on 3 evenly spaced axes around the center. And the mountain folds of these pleats are going to come straight in to the center point. All 3 coming to the center, which means they intersect at a single point. Now, if this is going to be a right-handed twist, then the valley folds would be above the pleat as it's headed out to the right-hand side. So we can set up our mountain folds. And this is really the one setting where I'll say to set up all of the mountain folds and then place the valleys. Usually with twists, I'm folding the whole pleat, so the mountain and the valley, and then going over to the next and folding the whole pleat. But with 3, that's fairly manageable to do just the mountains and then decide where the valleys are going. So if you've never folded this twist before, let's take a look a little bit at the side view. So as I'm folding, I want to make valley folds one spacing away from each of my mountain folds, and that'll let this kind of stand up. And you can see there's tension in the middle. It doesn't want to all be standing up at the same time. And we're going to let our pleats rotate around and fall over. And we're going to encourage our pleats to be flat from the outside in. And I'm moving my fingers the same distance from the center on all of these pleats, and where the valley fold of one direction hits the mountain fold of the other direction, that's as far as this twist will spread out. So I want to press just outside of that to get the twist to spread open. And squash. And I'm going to use my bone folder to make sure that that's pressed nice and smooth. Now, we're going to see this closed triangle twist in both right-handed, like we just folded, and left-handed forms. And the distinction between the right-handed and the left-handed forms is which way these pleats fold over. So if I wanted to also get a model for referring back to later of the left-handed form, what I can do with this closed triangle twist, and another detail, this is called a closed twist because we have a very closed hole on the back there. If I wanted this to become a left-handed twist, I can lift up, kind of undo the squashing move, flip all of my pleats, and then re-squash. Technically, I didn't have to undo the squash. I could just move the pleats while keeping the folds, but it's a little easier to see if you lift it all up and then twist it the other way. So that is the closed triangle twist. Again, it looks like this on the back. And it's useful to have these individual twists as models of what moves we're going to do. First, so you can practice squashing them when there's nothing beside them. And second, so you can have them to refer back to if you ever have a question while you're folding the other pieces in Advent of Tess. So 1 down and 11 to go. So next up is the open triangle twist. It's still a triangle, so we're using those same 3 grid directions, but this time, instead of all of the folds meeting in the center, they are going to outline a grid triangle. So that first line I drew, I went 1 spacing further than the center, and then our third direction is going to be heading out, completing this outline of 1 grid triangle and heading off into the distance. Now this one, unlike the closed triangle, you can't arbitrarily put the valleys on either side of these mountains. You would get a different triangle twist if you put them on the opposite side from the open triangle twist. The valley folds always need to be further away from the outlined triangle that has mountains all around it. Now, I happened to draw this one in a left-handed way, but we can turn this into a right-handed triangle eventually, but not on, well, I'll save that for a little bit later. So when I'm picking up these pleats, I'm making sure that my mountains are staying mountains the whole way to the edge of the paper, and the valleys are just coming up and touching the mountains. And I want to have all 3 pleats laying down. Then I'm using that cue I mentioned earlier of where the valley touches the next direction of mountain. Just outside of that is where I want to press at the same time on all of my pleats. And then I can press from the top to spread that squash of paper all the way out into the corners. So this is a left-handed open triangle twist. If I flip it over, those pleats are still laying over in a left-handed way. So left-handed here is referring to if I put my thumb up from the center of the paper and curl my fingers around, I'm able to go around and not be lifting layers as I go. I'm always smoothing them with the hand that matches the twist-handedness or the chirality. If I wanted to make this piece of paper have a right-handed twist instead, notice just flipping the paper doesn't change the chirality of the twist. What I would have to do is open it up and change every valley fold to a mountain fold and every mountain fold to a valley fold. And once I've completed that transformation, now I have a new open triangle twist that is right-handed. And we'll be seeing both right and left-handed triangle twists throughout the pieces that we work on in Advent of Tess. So moving on to the hexagon twists, we're going to start with a closed hexagon twist. And whenever I say closed, that means that the pleats are going in and meeting at one point in the center. That is when we're talking about regular shapes. So that rule does not apply to the rhombus twists. It applies somewhat, but not entirely, which is unfortunate for the nomenclature. So these properties of the mountain folds are coming directly into the center, and there is a closed hole on the back as opposed to a open hole on the back. These are things that are paired together, mathematically speaking. So with the hexagon, I'm really going to emphasize that we don't just want to bring up the mountain folds. We also want to fold over on the valley. And in this case, we're only going to get like 1 or 2 grid spacings that we can really see the valley, but we want to really pinch that into place as we're setting up each of our new folds. And at some point that will pass beyond our ability to grasp with the left hand as we're passing these pleats around. But the important part is that we've kind of almost added a shadow valley fold to lock the pleats in place. And even so, with only 8 grid divisions, it's not locking very much. But once I have most of my folds, I'm wanting to get this down on the table as quickly as possible so it doesn't, flip out like you see it doing here. So yeah, the hexagon is very flexible, but we're not going to be flipping it inside out. And so now that I've got things more firmly under control with the help of the table, and again, this is something that would be even more under control if I used more grid divisions, like if I did this on 16, then these folds would be longer and you would have more space to grab them. From here, in order to squash, so the closed hexagon twist is simultaneously one of the simplest twists and one of the hardest twists, because it doesn't actually add any new folds to the paper, but getting the twist down is one of the harder moves to master early on when you're folding origami tessellations. So the way that I do it, and there are multiple ways to do it, is with a very sharp twist. So a very quick move. We're going to be rotating it 120 degrees. I'm going to kind of dimple the top, add a little bit of pressure so that it emphasizes all of these mountain folds along the edge, because otherwise they have a tendency to crumple in on themselves. And I'm going to grab, so while I'm dimpling, I'm going to grab, and I'm going to grab with my hand slightly cocked back so it's easier to twist around. This is a right-handed closed hexagon twist. So I'm going to dimple it, I'm going to grab 3 alternate sides, and I'm going to give it a very sharp twist. And it's going to feel like I'm mangling the paper a little bit. But as soon as it's getting down, I can start looking underneath and seeing, did that valley actually stay on a grid line? Let me put it back. That one, yeah. That one, okay. And by looking around and making sure that all of my folds are actually on grid lines, suddenly the central hexagon is much happier to be down and in place. Now, the most common mistake that I see with closed hexagon twists is leaving them back twisted. So notice with mine, I have these mountain folds going straight all the way until they hit the corner of the central hexagon. If your twist is back twisted, that would mean that you have this zigzag under your twist. And the way to fix that is by lifting a corner, putting it over where it would be if this mountain fold was continuing straight, and then letting the next corner follow and follow and follow and follow. And at some point, the one that's stuck under will pop out and follow as well. Yeah, so Dances with Aardvarks is saying you need 6 fingers to do this, but I'm able to get it done with only the fingers that I have, which last time I counted was the same as pretty much everyone else. So the closed hexagon can be converted from right to left-handed forms, just like the closed triangle, by flipping the pleats over. And here I've got a whole mess of stuff in the middle that's just kind of swirling along for the ride. And there is definitely 2 patterns where we have potential for left-handed closed hexagon twists. I don't remember specifically if they were using left-handed twists or not, but there's definitely potential to see that. And once again, so now this is in the left-handed state. When we flip the paper over, it's still left-handed on the other side. So that's the closed hexagon twist. Now for the open hexagon twist. Like the open triangle, we're going to see 6 directions because it's a hexagon, and not all meeting in the center. So like the open triangle part is not all meeting in the center because it's open. Anytime we have a hexagon, it's going to be 6 directions. So this time, I'll mark my center point there. My mountains are going to be 1 space out from the center. And this is going to outline a central hexagon. And it's also going to give us another characteristic shape that we can use when we're looking for this twist on a grid that already has some pleats folded. So the characteristic shape of the open hexagon is this puffy hexagon star. So outside of that central hexagon, we're going to have these points of the star, and those points happen because the valley folds are coming to the tips of the points. So the one I'm drawing right now is an open right-handed hexagon twist, and we're going to be pinching, and just like we saw with the open triangle, when we're putting these folds in place, we're letting the valley run just until it hits the next direction of mountain. So like the closed triangle, we're folding both the mountain and the valley at the same time. And I like to add layers on top, on top, on top. And if I had more grid, I would probably have needed to reach underneath and smooth out some of the final mountain folds. So once this hexagon twist is in place, we can lay these plates down on the table. We've got that puffy hexagon star showing up very clearly. And this one is the easiest of all of our twists to squash. We don't even really need to press on all 6 pleats. We just need to bop it from the top. So we want to make sure that the pleats are stable, but we don't really need to have full control of all 6 of them. It's just bam. And so this is the right-handed open hexagon twist. Notice that space that we outlined in the center, that central hexagon, is exactly the same shape that we see on the back side. Now, unlike the open triangle, where we did see exactly that one grid triangle hole, but the triangle on the inside was rotated, we see precisely the same space on the inside and on these outer plates. So that's a little quirk of the open hexagon twist. And actually we've seen almost all of the twists that have this property where the grid lines inside of the twist line up with the grid lines outside the twist. So the closed triangle, the closed hexagon, the open hexagon, and one final twist, the open rhombus twist. Or sorry, the closed rhombus, and then all of the hybrid hexagons. But for the basic twists, it's just the closed triangle, closed hexagon, open hexagon, closed rhombus. And this one we'll only be seeing in right-handed forms in Advent of Tess, so I'll leave it at that, but you can do the same trick of changing all the mountain folds to valleys, all the valleys to mountains, to get to the left-handed form from this folded state. So, next up, I'm going to grab another grid, and we're going to do the closed rhombus twist. Now the rhombus is a little bit odd. It's like a combination of a hexagon and a triangle. And you'll see more what I mean in a moment. And specifically, it's a combination of the open hexagon and the closed triangle to get this closed rhombus. So I'm going to have one mountain fold that passes straight through the center and keeps on going. I'm going to have one mountain fold, and I'm running this from the very center point that goes straight up. And then this is a very specific thing. I need to move one spacing in the direction of the acute angle between these folds to run a final mountain fold down to the bottom. So these acute angles are facing each other. And that is very important because the mountain folds are going to go on the outside of this. And it just does not work if you do it with the obtuse angles facing each other. And one property we're going to have here, that's a property shared with the open hexagon, is that these two diamonds, or these two grid triangles in the center, are going to form kind of a back-to-back diamond shape. So if I look at just this top corner of the open hexagon and that top half of the closed rhombus, those look pretty identical, ignoring the fact that there's another plate over there. Likewise, if I look at the bottom half of the rhombus and the bottom part of my hexagon, those look pretty identical. Then if I were to look at these two pleats at the right half, those look pretty identical. I'll show it with valley folds drawn on here. That looks pretty identical to these two pleats over here. And likewise, the left half, those two pleats, let's see, it would be, I drew that wrong. Those look pretty identical over here. So those are some cues that we can have in mind when we're folding this closed rhombus twist. And we're going to bring up our folds. Notice I'm gently emphasizing the mountains here and then folding over onto the valleys. The degree to which I emphasize all the mountains first and the degree to which I fold the mountain and the valley completely at once is slightly determined by how much else is going on the paper, and slightly determined by, okay, we just have 4 pleats. I can handle pinching 4 things at the same time. So this is like advanced ambidextrous origami tessellator skills of being able to pinch with 2 pairs of fingers on each hand. The pinkies are free, so only 8 fingers needed so far. And the closed rhombus squashes very similarly to the open hexagon. I can just press from the top and spread that out, assuming that I've roughly stabilized all of the pleats around it. And that is called a closed rhombus, even though not all of the mountain folds are going to a single point, because it's got this little slit on the back. So it's not quite as closed as the closed hexagon and the closed triangle, but it's still 0 area in that slit, so it's close enough. The rhombus is a shape that we will be seeing in both right and left-handed forms in Advent of Tess. So if we want to see the left-handed form, then we're going to be flipping or inverting all of our folds so that what was mountain is now valley, what was valley is now mountain. And then we get to see the left-handed form as well. So there's the left-handed closed rhombus twist, and this is using the same outline as the right-handed. Another way to switch between the handedness on these twists is to flip the direction of the pleats on the through line, the mountain fold that goes straight through, and swap grid directions on the other 2 corners of the twist. So that was flip the through line and change grid direction. So this one's going up and right. We're going to swap it for one coming to the same point that's going up and left. Likewise, this one, we're going to swap over and get back to our left-handed twist. So there's 2 different ways to swap between right and left-handed forms of the closed rhombus twist. And in general, the closed twists, there will be 2 different ways to swap between right and left-handed forms. The open twists, it's only inverting through the paper. So for our open rhombus twist. I'm going to grab my demo, and I do have tutorial videos specifically for each of these individual twists linked in the playlist down below. This one has a lot of extra drawing on it. The closed rhombus twist we saw was kind of a combination of pieces of the open hexagon and copies of the closed triangle. The open rhombus twist is kind of combinations of the double open hexagon, which you will see a tutorial for in that Summer of Twists playlist, and the open triangle twist. So it's just one more open in each dimension. And for this one, I'm going to start by noticing where my center is, and I'm going to draw a bounding box that is 2 grid spacings by 1 grid spacing. So I put my center point right there in the middle of one of the edges of length 2, and then notice the directions of the obtuse and the acute corners here. And I'm going to have my folds extending symmetrically around this box. So with the folds for the closed rhombus, effectively what we had is a 0 by 1 box. We had this little slit, and so we're incrementing each of those measures by 1 and getting a 1 by 2 box. I'll just go ahead and put this back in the folded state that's marked. And then our valleys, as always, are going to be further away from whatever shape is being outlined by the mountains. So I would want to put this mountain over here, or sorry, put the valley over here and not running into this central shape. So that's a common theme with pleats. Keep the valleys away from the center. And so just like with our other twists, I'm going to be pinching the mountains at least implicitly, folding the valleys, and then adding on these layers over the top, over the top, over the top. And the characteristic shape that we'll find with the open rhombus twist is this anvil. So we're adding on these little tips to our 2 by 1 parallelogram. It's making this X shape. I like to think of it as an anvil, so it has a 2-space base. It goes notch in, notch out, 2 spaces on top, notch in, notch out. And with all of those pleats in place, this is another one that you basically start pressing from the top. Keep stabilizing your pleats so that the valley folds that you can't see right now stay on grid lines. And then use the bone folder to squash the rest of the way. So this is the right-handed open rhombus twist, and I'm trying to think through all the 25 patterns. Do we see this in both right-handed and left-handed forms? I'm not entirely certain, but I'm pretty sure that when it does show up, I know it shows up in 2 different patterns. It's just a question of whether those are both right-handed. I think they are, but I'll go ahead and show the left-handed form as well. So like we've seen with the open hexagon, with the closed rhombus, with the open triangle, we can change all the mountains to valleys, all the valleys to mountains, to get to the left-handed form of this twist. Now, if you already had pleats in place and you were wanting to fold a left-handed version, the part that's useful in this process of folding that we're doing right now is more seeing how these folds interact with each other in the left-handed state. We would not be using this process of inverting a right-handed twist in order to fold a left-handed twist in a project that already has twists in it. And that's a good point, Chris. I didn't show the back side. So the back of the open rhombus is that 2x1 parallelogram that we outlined in the center. And that's no coincidence. So next up are our hybrid hexagon twists. There's a lot of them, and you just keep the new demos separate from the old demos beside me. And I'm going to demonstrate them on one grid because they all have the same folds. It's just some of the folds are mountain and some are valley and another. So they're all based on a continuum between the closed hexagon and the open hexagon. And they are based on tucking corners of the hexagon twist underneath. So this P1 hybrid hexagon, named P1 because it's a pentagon, and it's the first pentagon that you encounter going from an open hexagon twist. That's going to have one of its pleats shifted back to the closed state. So I'll use closed type pleat and open type pleat when I'm talking about these hybrid hexagon twists. I'm going to go ahead and turn this closed hexagon back into a right-handed closed hexagon. So we're dealing with the same handedness on both of these. And in the closed type pleats, we're going to see that mountain comes straight out to the corner and valley right beside it, which means the mountain is coming straight into the center of the twist. With the open type pleats, we'll see the mountain going one space away from the center of the twist, and the valley one space further than that. So if I take this pleat and change it to a closed type pleat, I'm moving this mountain one grid spacing down, putting the valley where the mountain used to be, and that is going to change these two sides of the open hexagon twist into valley folds, and it's going to add a new mountain fold right in here and a new mountain fold right in here, and those are both on grid lines. And then we can close that back up. So if I was folding this fresh from a new grid, that would be one closed type pleat, and then the rest of them being open. And I can go ahead and squash from here, but it's not a bam squash like the open hexagon. It would be, okay, let me reach in here and make sure that these pockets can lay down as valley folds and aren't bunching up in any way. And then I can squash the rest. So before I fold that all hard, I want to demonstrate the other setups. So we saw this P1, and Yeah, so Anish is asking, is this the same as an open sink? If you're transitioning from the open hexagon to a hybrid hexagon, it has some elements of a sink to it. It's slightly different because well, let's see, if I wanted to sink this entire area, yeah, that would be an open sink right there. The distinction is that that's not how we're going to set it up when we're folding other patterns. So if we have an open hexagon twist already, then yes, that is performing an open sink. But if we're folding directly from the grid, then we don't need to sink anything really. It just comes with the territory. So if I've got this set up with my 5 open type pleats and 1 closed type pleat, and I want to fold, let's say, this 2-fold hybrid hexagon that's in the shape of a rectangle instead, then the pleat on the opposite side from my existing closed type pleat is also going to become a closed type pleat. And that is going to set up my rectangle once I get, and this is something I would do down on the table, once I get these little cushions popped in. And that one's being slightly uncooperative. So it's a matter of which pleats we have in this open state and which ones we have in this closed state. So we talked about the P1, we talked about the 2-fold rectangle. The next one I want to bring up is the kite, because the kite also has only 2 pleats in a closed position, but they're not opposite each other. Instead of being opposite each other, they are, so we've got open, 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 and then it's going to be closed, open, closed. So this one is the one that's going to need to shift into the closed state. And now we can pop those corners down and get the kite. If we go for the 3-fold hybrid hexagon instead, we've got our closed, our closed up here, then open, then closed, then open, and then we're going to have another one in the closed state. So we're alternating between closed and open type pleats. Then we'll have this layout. And the thing that's easiest to go astray with on these hybrid hexagon twists is it's really, really easy to have some extra dimple. So here all my pleats are in the correct locations, but it looks funky and I can't squash just because I need to pop up from the back to find kind of this platform on top that matches my target shape. So with these hexagon twists, these hybrid hexagons, what I'm looking for is the pattern of open and closed type pleats as I go around, and also that I have that raised platform of the desired shape. And whenever I have these edges that are 3 grid lines, those are in line with a mountain fold from an open type pleat. And whenever I have an open pleat and then a closed pleat, I'm going to have that tuck under. And so it can be really tempting when you're folding these to let the closed type pleat tuck under into the valley of the open type pleat, but we need that mountain to continue a little further. And I like to even keep it as mountain all the way into the center of the twist, just to be sure, until it's time to pop that pillow and let it lay flat. So there are two more hybrid hexagon twists that I want to show today. If I reset this to a flat state, the two different ones that I want to show are with open, closed, closed, open, closed, closed, or the diamond hybrid hexagon, the twofold diamond. So when we're looking at the sequence, that's where we can see the symmetry. If it's open, open, closed, open, open, closed, that's a pattern, a repeating pattern of two chunks. That's going to be twofold rotationally symmetric. That's going to match the the rectangle hybrid hexagon. If it is open, close, closed, open, close, closed, that is also twofold, but it's going to match the diamond. If it's open, closed, open, closed, open, closed, that is three chunks. That's going to match the threefold hybrid hexagon twist. So with the diamond, we're going to have open, and it really doesn't matter which order you go around, whether you're adding pleats on top or adding pleats underneath. So it'll be open, closed, closed, and then open, closed, and then this one already wanted to be closed. And instead of these extensions of the open pleat going 3 grid spacings like we'd seen before, like if this was in an open state, that would be going 3 spacings. We're going to see them go only 2 spaces. And we'll see pleats kind of crossing through the center. So these closed type pleats are on grid lines that are crossing through the center. And here we have a slightly different situation when it comes to squashing. So we've got those little pillows on either side of the pointy corners, but under the obtuse corners, we have these little legs. You can see it's buckling there. And we're going to let this flap lay down flat as far as it can, and then buckle under the corner. And likewise on the other side, we're going to let this flap lay flat as far as it can and buckle. And even all of those folds are still only adding the same folds as the open hexagon twist to the grid. Bienvenidos, Zach. Saludos. So if I open this up, the only off-grid creases that I have are exactly the same as my open hexagon twist. And there's one final hybrid hexagon twist that I'd like to show. The easy way to show this is actually going to be on this kite example. And then I'll go through and show the backs of each of these hybrid hexagons as well. The difference between the kite and the P3 hybrid hexagon, and all of these, I should clarify, do have tutorials elsewhere on my channel. It's just bringing all of them into one place for Advent of Tess. And I'm going to have for the P3 hybrid hexagon, open, 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 and then closed, closed. And this is a good demonstration of this because we can't rely on those hexagon corners. We need to see the closed bits coming from the center of the hexagon. So we'll have this pleat shift to a closed state. So the mountain fold is headed straight into the center. And now, if we go to squash, we've got these two edges that are acting just like an open hexagon. These two little pockets underneath that are flattened as valleys, and then these two legs that we're going to sweep around in the same direction as our twist is twisting and lay that all down flat. So that's the P3 hybrid hexagon. Notice we have the P1 hybrid and the P3, but we're not using the P2, which would be with two closed pleats next to each other like this in this particular Advent of Tess series. So now let's take a look at the backs of all of these hybrid hexagons. The P1, when you flip it over, has this little kind of Pac-Man-y shape, which is fun. And then the two-fold rectangle hybrid hexagon has this hourglass. The three-fold hybrid hexagon is coming around a point, but with three of these pleats kind of slipping off outside of the point. The two-fold diamond also is coming around a point, but with two pleats off to the side. Let's see, we have the three symmetric ones. We did the P1. Now we need the kite. So the kite has some pleats coming to the center. It has this little diamondy thing going on, and it also has a pleat slipped off to the side. The difference with the P3 is that pleat that's off to the side is now also coming to the center. So these are less predictable when it comes to looking at the backside. And that is all of the twists that we're working with Advent of Tess this year. The one thing I do want to mention is that some of the threefold hybrid hexagons might be left-handed. So if I grab my unmarked grid, and I'm going to go ahead and flip it over so the kind of pleat memory is less salient. I'm going to have, working from the left hand and folding up and over, I'm going to have an open and then a closed and then an open and then a closed and then a open and then a closed. And then we can go ahead and squash that left-handed threefold hybrid hexagon twist. And flipping over, we see that same backside where we have 3 pleats around the point and 3 pleats further out. So earlier, is it important to push the little legs in the same direction rather than the opposite direction? Not really, but it minimizes extra creases, it minimizes layers. So if I have these little legs and I push them back the other way, then it's just zigzagging, and I'd rather it just zig once instead of going and folding more times than it needs to. Okay, so that is all that I have for you here today. I'm really looking forward to Advent of Tess, which starts in under 3 weeks on December 1st. I've got so many fun things to share. And actually, I'll go ahead and share the calendar for Advent of Tess. It's starting out with a tessellation with no off-grid creases at all. It's all 3-way intersections of pleats, and then getting into closed and open triangles. Day 3 actually only uses closed triangles, but it's a more complex arrangement. So I swapped it with day 2. Zoom in a little bit so you can see a bit better. And then using closed and open triangles for days 4 and 5, bringing in the closed hexagons with open triangles for days 6 and 7, then switching to open hexagons and closed triangles for day 8, bringing in the closed rhombus on days 9 and 10, the open rhombus on day 11, and that is right-handed. Day 12, using the same structure as the previous 3 days, but with the open hexagon in the center. Day 13, blowing up that structure basically and saying, okay, we're going to have the open hexagon in the center, but then it's going to be rhombus, rhombus, rhombus. That'll be fun. And then day 14, doing actually a similar structure to day 13, but we're going to have twists kind of more alternating. So it's a closed hexagon and closed rhombi in the middle, and then we're bringing back the open rhombi, and those are also going to be right-handed there. So both of the open rhombi are going to be right-handed. That's convenient. Day 15, we pack pretty much as many twists as possible onto that 24-fold grid. I should mention almost all of these are on 24 grid divisions, with the exception of days 1, 24, and 25, which use 16 divisions. And then, and this one actually uses rhombus twists on the middle of the back and here on the front. That rhombus is kind of a stand-in for the next repeat of a hexagon, but there's no partial twists this year, so it got finished off as a rhombus. You actually can repeat it that way too. And then we get into the hybrid hexagons. So this one is a right-handed 3-fold hybrid hexagon twist. These are the left-handed 3-fold hybrids. And this one, those 3-fold hybrids on the back are also left-handed. Here we have the 2-fold diamond. Notice the hourglass shape, or sorry, the 2-fold rectangle. And then the next day is the 2-fold diamond, then back to the 2-fold rectangle for 2 more days, then getting into the asymmetric hybrid hexagons with the kite, the P1, and the P3. So there's all kinds of fun twists to play with, fun tessellations to work on. And yeah, there's so much to be folded. And one actual thing, earlier you commented harder at day 14. That one actually, I already have a full tutorial for folding with repeats. The pattern is enveloped, and if I remember correctly off the top of my head, the title of the video is something like folding with incomplete tiling breaks. It's named something different in my database, pseudo tiling breaks. But yeah, and Chris, I'm glad that you understand the hybrid hexagons better now. These are so much fun. And one of the great things about the hybrid hexagon twists is that they have multiple orientations that look different. And so if you attach them in each of those different orientations to an existing pattern, you end up with different patterns. So all of these ones that I'm teaching are just the ones that fit nicely on this size of grid and work well in the sequence for this year. And there's no shortage of patterns for future years. So happy folding, everyone. See you for Advent of Tess. I'll be back next week to, I forget what I'm even doing, folding something probably. And I will see you all later on.